My fiancé's childhood sweetheart claimed to have uremia and somehow learned of a folk remedy, insisting that just a tiny fragment of his kidney could be cultivated into medicine to save her life. I knew that my fiancé's childhood sweetheart had an unrequited love for someone else. And it was actually this person who was suffering from uremia. I told my boyfriend everything, but he accused me of being jealous and trying to kill his childhood sweetheart, so he drugged me, murdered me, cut out my kidneys, and left me to die on the operating table. When I opened my eyes again, I had been reborn back to the day my boyfriend learned about his childhood sweetheart's illness. A sharp pain shot through the back of my neck, followed by the phantom agony of having my kidney brutally carved out. I bolted upright in bed, drenched in cold sweat. Hadn't I died? I died in that black clinic reeking of disinfectant and blood, where my fiancé of 8 years, Enzo Jiang, personally pinned me down on the operating table and removed both my kidneys. I gasped for air, looking around frantically. This wasn't the cold morgue, but the rented apartment I shared with Enzo Jiang. Though small, I had kept it clean and cozy. The wall still bears our photo together, where I'm smiling with pure happiness, nestled beside Enzo Jiang. But now, looking at that smiling face, I can only feel an overwhelming sense of irony. On the table, a signed voluntary donation agreement lies quietly. Beside it is Arya Bai's medical record, the words end-stage uremia, only 3 days left to live stinging my eyes painfully. It's all fake. In my previous life, I used connections to obtain Arya Bai's medical records. She only had a common case of nephritis and didn't need a kidney transplant at all. What she really wanted was 2 healthy kidneys to prolong the life of her beloved, and Enzo Jiang was the unlucky one chosen for it. He was chosen because his Arya Bai's lapdog, every time, even on our anniversary or when we were choosing wedding venues or trying on wedding dresses, as long as Arya Bai called, Enzo Jiang would leave me behind without hesitation to choose her, and I knew Arya Bai had an unattainable white moonlight. Knew that even as a second choice she wouldn't pick Enzo Jiang, so I endured it again and again. Outside the window came Enzo Jiang's deliberately lowered voice. He was on the phone, speaking with a tenderness and affection I'd never heard before. Arya, don't cry anymore, it breaks my heart. Don't worry about Isla, I'll handle it. She wouldn't dare make a scene. Trust me, I'll come first thing tomorrow morning. We can't delay your treatment any longer. Be good and listen to me. Go to sleep early. Tomorrow, I'll be able to save you. The exact same words, the exact same scenario as in the previous life. I had already heard it once, yet my heart still ached unbearably. 8 years of love, and he killed me for another woman. Instinctively, I touched the back of my neck, smooth and unblemished, without the hideous scar from when he pushed me into a table corner in my past life. My kidney was still there too. I closed my eyes, and the despair and pain from my past life engulfed me like a tidal wave. I remember how Enzo Jiang knelt before me, tears streaming down his face as he pleaded how pitiful Arya Bai was. He said Arya Bai was like a sister to him, someone he grew up with, the most important person in his life. He couldn't live without her. He said all it would take was a small piece of his kidney tissue for drug cultivation to save Arya's life, and it wouldn't harm his body at all. He even signed that ridiculous voluntary donation agreement. I love children dearly and was worried that removing part of his kidney would affect him, so I outright refused and reported that illegal clinic. I loved him for 8 years. From school uniforms to wedding dresses, I thought we were each other's one and only. But what I waited for wasn't the wedding he promised, but the cold operating table and the removed kidneys, and that sentence, sorry, Isla, if you hadn't delayed so long, just a small fragment of kidney would have been enough. After my death, my soul hovered in the air, watching Enzo Jiang take the money from selling my kidneys and hand it to Arya Bai. Arya Bai immediately threw herself into the arms of an unfamiliar man, giggling and saying, Yangji, we can finally be together. Look, I've prepared the best gift for you. That fool Enzo Jiang was completely deceived by her. For the sake of her illusory love, he personally sent his fiancée to her death. The most ridiculous part is that, fearing exposure after my death, they didn't even spare my body, throwing it directly into the incinerator and publicly claiming I had absconded with money. Upon receiving the news, my parents turned grey overnight, desperately searching for their unfilial daughter, only to succumb to depression and pass away. Hatred, like the infernal flames of hell, burns fiercely in my chest. Enzo Jiang, Arya Bai, in my past life, you destroyed everything I had. This time, I have returned. I will no longer argue, no longer fight, nor beg for your ridiculous love. I will weave a net with my own hands and bury you, that despicable pair, along with your filthy desires. I threw off the covers, walked barefoot to the door, and listened quietly. Enzo Jiang hung up the phone, and the sound of footsteps grew closer. I quickly lay back on the bed, pulled up the covers, turned my back to the door, adjusted my breathing, and pretended to be fast asleep. The door was gently pushed open, and I could feel him standing by the bed, watching me for a long time. In the darkness, I clenched my fists, my nails digging deep into my palms. Enzo Jiang stood by the bed for a long time, so long that I almost thought he had noticed something. Just as I was about to lose my composure, he finally let out a soft sigh, lay down beside me, and pulled me into his arms from behind. His chest was warm and firm, once the harbor I cherished most, but now, I only felt utterly disgusted. Isla, he murmured in my ear, his voice carrying a barely detectable hint of hesitation. I know you're still awake. I froze, not moving. He tightened his arms, resting his chin on the top of my head, his tone softening into something tender and pleading. Isla, I'm sorry, I know this is selfish of me, but I truly had no other choice. Arya, I watched her grow up. I can't just stand by and watch her die. He paused, as if gauging my reaction. Don't blame me, okay? Once Arya recovers from her illness, I'll make it up to you double. We'll get married right away. I swear, I'll treat you well for the rest of my life. The same old lines again. In my past life, I was also held in his arms like this, listening to these affectionate lies of his, my heart melting into a puddle. I even comforted him in return, telling him not to blame himself, saying I understood and supported him. Looking back now, it was laughably foolish. I slowly turned around and met his eyes in the darkness. Unlike in my past life, I didn't immediately show understanding. Instead, I remained silent, letting tears slide from the corners of my eyes and soak the pillow. I saw a flicker of panic and impatience in his gaze, but it was quickly masked by feigned guilt. Isla, don't cry. He reached out to wipe my tears, but I turned my head away. Enzo Jiang, I finally spoke, my voice hoarse and trembling from deliberate suppression. I'm not blaming you. I'm just afraid it'll hurt you. As I spoke, I reached out and gently touched his abdomen. It was flat and warm. Didn't the doctor say they need to take a kidney tissue sample? Even if it's just a small piece, it must still hurt, right? My words seemed to catch him off guard. He froze, all the prepared arguments stuck in his throat. He probably expected me to make a scene as usual, questioning why he would harm himself for Arya Bai, or even accusing him of not caring about me at all. After all, over these 8 years, we've had countless fights because of Arya Bai's presence, but I didn't say anything. What I showed was the image of a reasonable fiancé deeply in love with her betrothed, concerned for his well-being. I'm not in pain. Enzo Jiang's voice faltered slightly, his eyes darting uneasily. If it can save Arya. What's a little pain? I sniffled, forcing a smile that looked more pitiful than tears. Since you've already decided, I support you, but you have to promise me that after the surgery, you'll rest properly and not push yourself too hard. Seeing my reasonable demeanor, the last trace of vigilance in Enzo Jiang's eyes vanished, replaced by a relieved sense of triumph. He was probably thinking that despite all my fussing, he still had me firmly under his control. As long as he softened up a little and said a few sweet words, wouldn't I just obediently comply? Isla, you're so good to me. He held me tightly in his arms, with such force that I almost couldn't breathe. Don't worry, I'll never let you down in this lifetime. Buried in his embrace, the familiar scent on him made me nauseous. Never let me down, Enzo Jiang, you're already beyond redemption. That night, I was exceptionally obedient and considerate, even volunteering to wake up early the next day to prepare some nourishing food for him before the surgery. Enzo Jiang completely let his guard down and slept soundly in the latter half of the night, even snoring lightly. But I lay awake all night. I quietly got up, walked to the living room, and picked up the fake medical report of Arya Bai from the table. I recognized the signature of the attending physician above. It's from the notorious owner of a shady clinic, Wang Haidong, in my previous life. He was the one who personally removed my kidney. I took out my phone and photographed every detail of the medical record. Then, I opened Enzo Jiang's laptop. His computer wasn't password protected because he never thought I'd dare to snoop into his privacy. I easily found his chat history with Arya Bai in his messages. Their chat logs were even more explicit and disgusting than I had imagined. Arya, Enzo, is everything okay with Isla Su? She's so petty. She'd never agree to you taking risks for me. Enzo Jiang, don't worry, she's just an idiot. I easily sweet-talked her into agreeing. No matter how much she fusses, she can't escape my control. Arya, you're so good to me, Enzo. When I recover, what reward would you like? Enzo Jiang, don't you already know what reward I want? Followed by a suggestive kissing emoji. I suppressed the urge to smash my computer and took screenshots of each of these chat messages one by one. This wasn't enough. What I wanted was irrefutable evidence that would ruin their reputations and leave them with no chance of recovery. I returned to the bedroom, gazing at Enzo Jiang's sleeping profile. Feeling a chill in my heart, I leaned down and whispered softly in his ear, Enzo Jiang, sleep well. This might be your last peaceful night. Early the next morning, as usual, I prepared a lavish breakfast for Enzo Jiang, looking at the millet porridge, fried eggs, and several delicate side dishes on the table. A satisfied smile appeared on his face. Isla, you've worked hard, getting up so early. He walked over, instinctively trying to hug me from behind. I subtly sidestepped to avoid him. Picking up the bowl of porridge, hurry up and eat. Didn't you say you were going to the hospital? Don't be late. My aloofness made him pause slightly, but he didn't think much of it, assuming I was just upset about him going to donate a kidney. As he ate breakfast, he tried to coax me in that self-assured tone of his. All right, don't be angry, I promise. This is the last time. Once Arya recovers, all my time will be yours. Okay, look, we've already set our wedding date. We're taking our pre-wedding photos next month, and I've even decided on our honeymoon destination, Maldives, the place you've always wanted to visit the most. He painted our wonderful future with a tone so sincere and affectionate, yet all I felt was disgust. In my past life, he used these very words to lull me into a false sense of happiness, only to push me into hell in the end. I didn't speak, just lowered my head to sip the porridge, hiding the mockery and hatred in my eyes. At that moment, Enzo Jiang's phone chimed with a WeChat notification. He picked it up and glanced at it, his lips immediately curling into a doting smile. I didn't need to guess to know it was Arya Bai. Sure enough, he was typing rapidly on the screen, even forgetting to eat breakfast. After a while, he seemed to remember something, looked up at me, his eyes slightly evasive. I put down my bowl and looked at him calmly. Is it Arya? How is she? Ah, yes, she's already at the hospital, asked me to go there early. Enzo Jiang replied vaguely. My phone vibrated along with it. It was a WeChat message from a mutual friend, containing a screenshot. The screenshot was of a recent Moments post by Arya Bai. The photo showed a childhood picture of her and Enzo Jiang, two 7 or 8-year-old children smiling brightly in the sunlight. Childhood sweethearts, innocent and carefree. The caption reads, "Some feelings are etched in the bones. Thank you, my hero." At Enzo Jiang, there are already dozens of comments below. A. Wow, lock it in. I approve of this match. B. Enzo is awesome. This is true love. C. At Isla Su, how does it feel? Shouldn't the official girlfriend have something to say? That friend who tagged me is Arya Bai's best friend and also one of the people who mocked me the most in my previous life. She always insinuated, both openly and subtly, that I wasn't good enough for Enzo Jiang, that I was just a replacement, and that the one Enzo Jiang truly loved would always be Arya Bai. I fought with Enzo Jiang countless times over these words, but every time he would just accuse me of making a big deal out of nothing and being unreasonable. Now it seems that what they said was actually true. I handed my phone to Enzo Jiang, the screen displaying that glaring social media post. I looked at him, without hysteria, without questioning, just quietly watching him, waiting for his reaction. Enzo Jiang's face instantly turned somewhat unpleasant. He wasn't feeling guilty towards me. He was angry at me for not understanding the bigger picture. Isla Su, are you ever going to stop? He frowned, lowered his voice, and his tone was full of reproach. Arya is almost dying. She just wants to reminisce about the past in her final moments. What's wrong with that? We're just childhood friends, completely innocent. Do you have to be so sensitive and blow things out of proportion? Can't you be more generous? Why must you add to her troubles at this moment? What's your real intention? A barrage of accusatory questions, sharp as knives, each one piercing the heart. I looked at his face, flushed with anger, and suddenly laughed. In my past life, I thought he was simply deeply loyal, just unable to distinguish the boundaries between friendship and love. Only now do I realize that he understands everything. In his heart, my feelings, my dignity, are utterly worthless. You're right. I put away my phone, slowly stood up, and looked at him calmly. I was being too sensitive. My calmness once again took Enzo Jiang by surprise. The anger he had prepared instantly had no outlet, leaving his face alternating between green and white with suppressed rage. You, as long as you know, he said, barely maintaining his dignity. Millimeter. I nodded, picking up the car keys on the table. Since Arya is already at the hospital, let's hurry. She must be terrified being there alone. I even, thoughtfully, picked up his coat for him. Don't keep her waiting. Enzo was completely stunned, staring at me with a gaze full of scrutiny and suspicion. He couldn't understand why I, who had been so tense and confrontational just a moment ago, suddenly became so docile and sensible the next. I didn't give him time to think, walking straight toward the door. Let's go, or it'll be too late. In my heart, a wild yet meticulous plan was quietly taking shape. Arya, bye. Don't you enjoy provoking others? Good. Next, I'll let you experience the taste of falling from the clouds into hell. On the way to the hospital, Enzo Jiang and I didn't exchange a single word. He kept glancing at me through the rearview mirror, the curiosity in his eyes growing deeper. He couldn't understand my transformation, and it unsettled him. This was exactly the effect I wanted. I wanted him to feel in control one moment and then suddenly lose it. This uncertainty would make him increasingly agitated, more prone to mistakes. Upon arriving at the hospital, we didn't go to the regular inpatient department but instead made our way to a secluded old building at the back. This was the hospital's former site, long abandoned, with only a few departments remaining, one of which included the Kidney Disease Rehabilitation Therapy Center, the Shady Clinic's affiliated facility. When we arrived, Arya Bai was sitting on a bench outside the consultation room, her face pale and her demeanor pitifully fragile. The moment she saw Enzo Jiang, she immediately stood up, like a startled fawn, her eyes red as she threw herself into his arms. Enzo, you finally came. I was so scared. Enzo Jiang immediately held her in his arms with heartache, softly comforting her. Don't be afraid, I'm here now, it's okay. They were performing a scene of deep affection in front of me, completely ignoring my presence. I just stood quietly to the side, like an outsider, watching coldly. A man in a white lab coat, looking to be in his 50s, walked out of the consultation room. He was Wang Haidong. Upon seeing us, he adjusted his glasses and flashed a greedy smile. Mr. Jiang is here. Arya's condition isn't great. We need to hurry. Dr. Wang, I'm counting on you, Enzo Jiang said with a grave expression. Don't worry. Wang Haidong patted his shoulder. We're professionals. His so-called professionalism was actually expertise in harvesting people's kidneys. Looking at his hypocritical face, I felt nauseous. Next, they began discussing the so-called surgical details. Wang Haidong took out a stack of documents for Enzo Jiang to sign, spouting all sorts of medical jargon, tissue matching, drug cultivation. It all sounded like an elaborate scam. That idiot Enzo Jiang, barely understanding anything, still pretended to know it all, nodding repeatedly. I made an excuse, saying I needed to use the restroom, and temporarily left the place. Hiding at the corner of the staircase, I pulled out a brand new voice recorder from my pocket. I had sneaked out to buy it last night while Enzo Jiang was asleep. I took a deep breath and dialed Arya Bai's number. The call was answered almost immediately, Arya Bai's voice tinged with wariness. Isla Su, why are you calling me? I just wanted to try persuading you one more time. I made my voice sound weak and full of jealousy. Arya Bai, you should stop this. Enzo Jiang is willing to sacrifice his own health for you. How can you live with yourself after all he's done? My words seemed to please her. A smug chuckle came through the phone. Isla Su. What's the use of saying all this now? Enzo loves me, not you. For me, he'd do anything. Oh really? I deliberately provoked her. He loves you, so you feel justified taking his kidney. His greatest love is still you, isn't it? Of course. Arya Bai's arrogance was practically sky-high. Isla Su, did you think just because you monopolized him for a few years, he became yours? Let me tell you, he's my dog. When I say east, he wouldn't dare go west. He loves you so much he'd even donate a kidney for you. And you, I continued laying the trap, don't you have anything to show for it? This sentence completely ignited Arya Bai's desire to show off. She lowered her voice and said in a boastful tone, "Expression, of course there is, but not for him." What do you mean? I pretended not to understand. Afraid you'd die of jealousy. I might as well tell you. Arya Bai got carried away and finally revealed that shocking secret. What does Enzo Jiang amount to? He's just my backup. The one I truly love is Xu Yanji, who's sick and needs a kidney transplant. Enzo Jiang's kidney happens to be a perfect match. Once his kidney is transplanted into Yanji, Yanji will recover, and his family will approve of us being together. Although I had known about this all along, to prevent Enzo Jiang from catching on after the surgery, I deliberately raised my voice in feigned surprise. So, you've been deceiving him all along? Trick him. So what? Arya Bai's laughter was sharp and piercing. He's willing to be fooled by me. I even think one kidney isn't enough. I'll take both his kidneys, leave him a cripple, and make you take care of him for the rest of your life. Even the trash I throw away won't be picked up by you. Tell me, isn't this the best repayment for him? You crazy lunatic. I let out a timely exclamation, then panically hung up the phone. I leaned against the cold wall and pressed the stop button on the recorder. Listening to the clear, venomous, and brazen voice of Arya Bai coming through, I smiled. She must have guessed I was recording. But she was certain that Enzo Jiang, this simp, wouldn't believe such evidence, even if it was already laid out plainly before him, in the previous life. Enzo Jiang saw the medical records of Arya Bai that I presented and assumed I had forged them out of jealousy. So, in this life, I'll make sure this evidence only surfaces after he's been reduced to a worthless wreck. When I returned home with the voice recorder, Enzo Jiang still hadn't come back. Wang Haidong told him that the so-called preoperative preparation was quite complex, requiring the extraction of his blood sample for final matching analysis, and instructed him to wait in the clinic's observation room for the day. This was, of course, a lie. They simply needed time to prepare for the illegal kidney removal surgery and to find a way to keep me away. I didn't waste any time and immediately began executing my next plan. First, I emailed the audio file to myself as a cloud backup, then hid the recorder in a pocket close to my body. Next, I called Enzo Jiang's parents. When the call connected, I tearfully exaggerated the story about Enzo Jiang wanting to go to a kidney donation organization for Arya Bai, uncle and auntie. No matter how much I tried to persuade him, he wouldn't listen. Today, that woman took him to some small clinic, saying they were going to perform some surgery. I'm so scared something might happen to him. Enzo Jiang's parents have never liked Arya Bai, thinking she's too scheming and always clinging to Enzo Jiang. They are quite satisfied with me as their daughter-in-law, though, upon hearing that their son was willing to alter his own body for an outsider, they predictably panicked. Enzo Jiang's mother was so furious on the phone that her voice trembled. That unfilial son, has he lost his mind? Isla, don't be afraid. Send us the address. We're coming right away. But Enzo Jiang told me not to tell you, he said. I pretended to hesitate. Don't mind him, he's completely bewitched by that vixen now. Hurry up and send the address. If anything really happens to him, we won't want to live either. I'm still looking up their address. I'll send it to you as soon as I find it. After hanging up, I edited the address of the black market clinic along with a tearful plea for help into a text message and set it to send at a scheduled time. I contacted Enzo Jiang's parents not to stop Enzo Jiang, since he's willing to sacrifice everything for his childhood sweetheart. Then this perfect couple should stay locked together forever. It's just that what Arya Bai wants are both of Enzo Jiang's kidneys. This would cost him his life. I'll wait until his surgery is halfway through, after one kidney has been removed, then have his parents rescue him. This way, he won't die. But he won't be able to live like a normal person either. Set the sending time for tomorrow at 10 a.m. calculating the distance. The timing should be about right. After finishing all this, I walked into the kitchen and began leisurely simmering soup. I used a premium blackbone chicken and added many expensive tonics. I want to prepare a final dinner for my dear fiancé. Early the next morning, Enzo Jiang returned. He looked somewhat tired but in good spirits. With a hint of barely concealed satisfaction and relief in his eyes, he thought the biggest obstacle, me, had been completely dealt with. Isla, I'm back. He walked over, wanting to hug me. Carrying a bowl of steaming chicken soup, I stepped out of the kitchen, deftly avoiding his embrace. You're back. Sit down quickly. I made some soup for you to nourish your body. I placed the bowl in front of him with a gentle smile. The aroma of the soup instantly filled the entire room. Enzo Jiang looked at me, a flicker of emotion and guilt flashing in his eyes. Isla, thank you. Don't worry, once I recover, I'll give you the grandest wedding in the world, he said. Holding my hand and making a solemn promise, I smiled and nodded. All right, I'll be waiting to see how you step by step walk toward your own destruction. He picked up the soup bowl and was about to drink it. Just as his lips were about to touch the rim of the bowl, my wrist jerked as if tripped by something, and I lunged toward him. Ah! With my startled cry, the soup bowl slipped from his hand, crashing to the ground with a clang and shattering into pieces. The scalding chicken soup, mixed with precious medicinal herbs, splashed all over him, leaving him in a miserable state. Ah! Enzo Jiang instantly screamed in shock. He looked down at the mess on the floor, then raised his head to glare at me. The gratitude and guilt in his eyes vanished without a trace, replaced by overwhelming fury. Isla Su, he suddenly stood up, shoving me away, his voice hoarse with rage. You did this on purpose. You never wanted me to save Arya. You're just trying to stall for time, trying to get Arya killed, aren't you? Enzo Jiang's eyes were bloodshot, like a beast provoked. In his view, I deliberately knocked over the soup just to stop him from saving Arya by. Listen to me, Isla Su, it's useless. He pointed at my nose and said viciously, no one can stop me today. If anything happens to Arya, I won't let you off the hook. With those words, he rushed out of the house without looking back. The door was slammed shut with force by him, making a loud noise. The whole world instantly fell silent. I didn't chase after him immediately. I knew I needed to give them enough time to bring this act to its climax. I also need time to contact another important audience. I dialed an unfamiliar number, which I had gone through great lengths to find yesterday. The phone rang for a long time before it was answered, and a young man's lazy yet wary voice came through. Who is this? Is this Mr. Xu Yanji? I got straight to the point. Who are you? The other person's tone instantly turned cold. Who I am isn't important, I said calmly. What matters is that I know a secret about you and your girlfriend, Arya Bai. A secret about a kidney donor. There was silence on the other end of the line. I could sense his breathing becoming rapid. I don't know what you're talking about. He was still being stubborn. Oh really? I let out a light chuckle. The underground clinic in the west of the city illegally harvested someone else's kidney to perform your transplant surgery. Mr. Xu, once this gets exposed, what do you think will happen to you and your girlfriend, who would stop at nothing for love? What do you want? A trace of panic finally crept into his voice. I don't want anything. I just want to invite you to watch a good show. I gave him the address of the underground clinic. 10:30 sharp. The show starts on time. And I won't wait for latecomers. With that, I hung up the phone directly. I believe Xu Yanji will definitely come. No one would joke about their own future and life. He needs to come and see for himself whether what I said is true or false. And I want him to witness with his own eyes how his love-crazed girlfriend drags him into the abyss. Meanwhile, in the black clinic, Enzo Jiang had already changed into surgical scrubs and was lying on a cold operating table to keep him quiet. Wang Haidong had given him some sedatives in advance, but in reality, these were standard anesthetics. His mind felt somewhat groggy, and his vision began to blur. Arya Bai, dressed in sterile scrubs and wearing a mask, walked to his bedside holding a document. Enzo, hurry up and sign this, she said impatiently, with a hint of urgency in her tone. Enzo Jiang looked at her dazedly. What is this? It's the standard surgical consent form. Arya Bai pressed the pen into his hand, coaxing him. The doctor said the previous fragment removal plan was too risky with a low success rate. This is the latest solution. Hurry and sign it, don't waste time. What she handed him was a voluntary dual kidney donation agreement. Enzo Jiang's consciousness was already fading. He only saw the words, voluntary donation, and assumed it was the same document as before. Didn't you say only kidney fragments were needed? He asked with his last shred of clarity, puzzled. The doctor said one might not be enough for safety, so we'll sign for 2 first and decide later based on the situation. It's standard procedure, Aryabai explained impatiently, grabbing his hand and forcing it onto the signature line. Enzo, hurry up, I feel so terrible. She began to feign painful moans beside him. Hearing her moans, Enzo Jiang's last bit of rationality completely crumbled. He hesitated no longer and absent-mindedly signed his name on the agreement. Aryabai looked at the signature, a smug sneer curling at the corner of her lips. She swiftly tucked away the agreement and shot a meaningful glance at Wang Haidong beside her. Understanding her cue, Wang Haidong immediately directed 2 assistants to push Enzo Jiang into the operating room. The door of the operating room slowly closed, cutting off all connection to the outside world. Aryabai leaned against the wall and let out a long sigh of relief. She took out her phone and sent a WeChat message to Xu Yenji. Yenji, it's done. Wait for my good news. Everything was going according to her plan. She could already envision the beautiful future where she and Xu Yenji would be together, living happily ever after once he recovered, and Enzo Jiang, that fool who was completely under her control, would become a cripple without both kidneys, forever trampled beneath her feet. 10 o'clock had arrived, in the operating room. The cold light of the surgical lamp shone on Enzo Jiang's pale face. The anesthetic had been injected into his body, and he had completely lost consciousness. Wang Haidong put on gloves, picked up the sharp scalpel, and aimed it at Enzo Jiang's lower back. His movements were skilled. Clearly not his first time doing this. The cold blade cut through the skin, and blood instantly gushed out. Outside the operating room, Aryabai paced anxiously. She glanced at the operating room door from time to time. Then at her phone, waiting for Xu Yenji's reply. Yet, the message she sent to Xu Yenji remained unanswered. This left her with an inexplicable sense of irritation, until one of Enzo Jiang's kidneys was removed, and Wang Haidong's scalpel made a squelch as it sliced open the other side of Enzo Jiang's lower back. With a loud bang, the door of the operating room was kicked open from the outside. The tremendous noise startled everyone. Wang Haidong's hand trembled, and the scalpel made a deep cut on Enzo Jiang's remaining kidney. Freeze, police. Several uniformed police officers rushed in and quickly took control of the scene. Immediately after, I appeared at the doorway with Enzo Jiang's parents, their faces ashen. When they saw their son lying unconscious and covered in blood on the operating table, Enzo Jiang's mother, Wu Jing, nearly fainted from shock, but was steadied by Jiang Jiangguo just in time. My son, she let out a piercing scream. Struggling to break free and rush toward him, Aryabai was completely dumbfounded. She stared blankly at the suddenly arriving police, me, and Enzo Jiang's parents, her mind going blank. You, why are you all here? She pointed at me, her voice trembling. Ignoring her, I walked straight to the operating table. I took out my phone and pressed the play button. What kind of person is Enzo Jiang? He's just my backup. Best to remove both his kidneys and make him a useless person. Trash I threw away. Aryabai's voice echoed clearly throughout the entire operating room. Every single person present heard it loud and clear. Aryabai's face instantly drained of color, turning as pale as paper. No, that's not it. It's not like that. She frantically waved her hands, stammering incoherently in an attempt to explain. Jiang Jiangguo could no longer hold back. In a flash, he rushed forward and slapped her hard across the face. You venomous, heartless witch, what do you take my son for? Trembling with rage, his eyes bloodshot, he looked as if he wanted to devour someone. Without pausing, I placed Aryabai's real medical records for nephritis, the evidence of the clinic's illegal practice, and the voluntary dual kidney donation agreement on the nearby table. Officer, here is all the evidence that she forged medical records, colluded with an illegal clinic, committed fraud, and intended to remove both of Enzo Jiang's kidneys. The evidence is irrefutable and undeniable. The police immediately stepped forward and placed cold handcuffs on the shocked Arya Bai and Wang Haidong. No, it wasn't me, it was Isla Su. She was jealous of me, she framed me. Arya Bai made one last desperate struggle, screaming hysterically, just like the rhetoric from the previous life. However, the only person who would have believed her in the previous life was now lying on the operating table, fighting for his life. Wu Jing's lips turned purple with rage as she pointed at her unconscious son on the operating table, her voice filled with heart-wrenching grief. Enzo Jiang, open your eyes and see, for a woman like this, you're willing to throw your life away, you fool. At that moment, a young man in a trench coat, his face equally pale, appeared at the entrance of the operating room. It's Xu Yanji. He looked at the chaotic scene before him, at Arya Bai handcuffed by the police. His eyes filled with shock and fear. Seeing him, Arya Bai seemed to grasp at a lifeline, desperately pleading for help. Yanji, save me, tell them quickly, we truly love each other, this is all a misunderstanding. Xu Yanji's expression changed repeatedly, and finally, under the gaze of everyone, he slowly shook his head. Then turned away without hesitation and walked off briskly. His retreating figure became the last straw that broke Arya Bai. She collapsed to the ground, letting out a cry of despair. Enzo Jiang was rushed to the best hospital in the city. As expected, after emergency treatment, his life was saved. But the outcome was more painful to him than death. His left kidney had been completely removed by Wang Haidong, and his right kidney, due to improper surgical procedures, suffered severe infection and trauma, leading to a sharp decline in function. Doctors said he would likely spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair and on dialysis. He woke up from anesthesia the next afternoon, opening his eyes. He saw his parents' bloodshot eyes and smelled the pungent disinfectant in the hospital room. Dad, Mom, where am I? His voice was weak and hoarse. What about Arya? How is Arya? The woman who had nearly cost him his life was still all he could think about. Wu Jing's tears streamed down her face in an instant. She turned her head away, unable to bear looking at her stubborn son any longer. Jiangguo took a deep breath and played the recording from his phone for him once more. When Arya Bai's words, "It'd be best to remove both his kidneys and make him a useless cripple," echoed from the phone, Enzo Jiang's pupils constricted violently. The color drained from his face at a visibly rapid pace. No, it can't be. He shook his head in disbelief. Arya wouldn't do this to me. There must be some misunderstanding. He struggled to sit up, but the movement aggravated the wound on his lower back, causing him to grimace in pain. At that moment, the door to the hospital room swung open. 2 police officers entered. Followed by a handcuffed and haggard-looking Arya Bai, she came to identify the scene, or rather, to make one last desperate attempt. Enzo. The moment she saw Enzo Jiang, Arya Bai burst into tears and threw herself at his bedside. Enzo, you have to believe me, it was all Isla Su. She was jealous of me. She framed me with that edited recording. I did it all because I love you so much. Her tearful performance was utterly convincing. Had I not heard the complete recording myself, even I might have been fooled by her act. Enzo Jiang looked at her face, contorted with frantic sobbing, his mind in complete chaos. On one side were his parents' accusations and the cold recording. On the other were the tearful pleas and explanations of the woman he loved. He refused to believe he had been deceived. He couldn't believe that the woman he had loved for so many years could be so malicious. Arya, he reached out his hand, as if wanting to touch her face. Tell me this isn't true. Of course it's not true. Arya Bai grabbed his hand, crying even harder. Enzo, after all these years together, how can you not believe me? It's Isla Su. She can't stand to see us happy. She wants to ruin me, and she wants to ruin you too. Enough. Jiangguo couldn't take it anymore and roughly pulled Arya Bai away from Enzo Jiang. At this point, you still want to lie your way out of it. Officer, a woman like this deserves to rot in jail. A police officer stepped forward and said to Enzo Jiang, Mr. Jiang, regarding the case of Arya Bai's alleged fraud and intentional harm, we need you to provide a statement. Do you still believe you voluntarily donated both kidneys to her? Both kidneys. Enzo Jiang's mind buzzed with a sudden shock. He abruptly recalled the agreement and Arya Bai's impatience when urging him to sign it. His hands trembling, he reached toward his lower back. Thick layers of gauze covered the area. Yet two hollow, intense pains radiated from beneath. The attending physician happened to enter for rounds at that moment, frowning at the chaotic scene. He calmly explained Enzo Jiang's condition. The left kidney has been removed, and the right kidney is severely damaged. You'll require lifelong medication, with a high likelihood of needing dialysis to sustain your life. Lifelong medication, hemodialysis. Each word struck Enzo Jiang's heart like a heavy hammer. His life was utterly ruined, and the one who destroyed it all was the woman before him, weeping pitifully while claiming to love him. All the lies, all the disguises, collapsed instantly in the face of cruel reality. Regret, pain, despair, a mix of emotions overwhelmed his last psychological defenses. Why? He stared fixedly at Arya Bai, his lips trembling, unable to utter a complete sentence. Why did you do this to me? His eyes were filled with endless pain and accusation. Arya Bai felt guilty under his gaze and began to avert her eyes. Phut! Enzo Jiang spat out a mouthful of blood, his vision darkened, and he completely passed out. The ward once again descended into chaos. I stood outside the door, watching everything indifferently through the glass window. This is Enzo Jiang's torment, but my delight. The more he suffers, the more I rejoice. This is the price of betraying me. The final verdict was delivered swiftly. Arya Bai was sentenced to 15 years in prison for multiple charges, including fraud, intentional injury, and illegal organ trafficking, although Xu Yanji withdrew in time. As an accomplice with knowledge of the crimes, he was implicated, fired by his company, and his future was ruined. Wang Haidong, the owner of the illegal clinic, and his gang, involved in multiple cases of illegal organ trade, were sentenced to death. A sprawling black industry chain was thus uprooted entirely, and Enzo Jiang became the most ridiculous victim among countless others in this farce. He was left with permanent disabilities, barely able to take care of himself. The exorbitant medical bills and subsequent rehabilitation costs, like a bottomless pit, quickly drained the Jiang family's savings. After the initial grief, what remained for Jiang Jiangguo and Wu Jing was endless disappointment and resentment toward their son. They hated his lack of ambition and were furious at his foolishness. After covering the initial surgery costs, they left nothing behind, severed ties with him, and returned to their hometown. Out of sight, out of mind, after all. Enzo Jiang was already an adult, and they wouldn't face any consequences for abandoning him. But if they continue to support Enzo Jiang, the elderly couple will waste their entire lives on him. No one wants to spend their prime years and hard-earned money on their son, only to receive no gratitude in return and still have to toil without complaint, abandoned by all and utterly disgraced. Enzo Jiang's world has completely collapsed. After being discharged from the hospital, he was sent to a rehabilitation center. The once dashing and handsome man now spends his days confined to a wheelchair and surrounded by medicine bottles, barely getting by with the help of others. I heard that he had become gloomy and silent, often staring out the window alone, sitting there for entire days. One day, I received a call from an unknown number. It was Enzo Jiang's caregiver. He said Enzo Jiang has something to tell me. I was about to hang up immediately, but then I thought, some things are better settled face to face. Originally, I felt Arya Bai's death wasn't satisfying enough for me. Now that Enzo Jiang has walked right into the line of fire, he can't blame me for crushing him completely while I'm at it. So, I agreed to meet him. That was the last time I saw Enzo Jiang. In the courtyard of the rehabilitation center, he sat in a wheelchair, pushed by a caregiver. In just a few short months, he seemed to have aged over a decade, his hair mostly gray, his eyes sunken, and his body so thin it was little more than skin and bones. When he saw me, a faint glimmer of light instantly appeared in his cloudy eyes. He waved the caregiver away, then struggled to maneuver his wheelchair closer to me. Isla, you came. His voice was terribly hoarse, as if scraped by sandpaper. I didn't speak, just stared at him coldly. Isla, I know I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong. He lifted his head, looking at me with an almost pleading gaze. Will you forgive me? Let's start over. I swear, I'll treat you right from now on. I'll give you everything I have. He spoke with such sincerity, tears even welling up in his eyes, watching him in this pitiful and pathetic state. I couldn't help but find it utterly laughable. Enzo Jiang, I finally spoke. my voice eerily calm, devoid of any ripple. Have you forgotten that you've lost everything? My words were like a bucket of cold water, extinguishing half the hope in his eyes. His face turned slightly pale, his lips parting as if he wanted to say something. I didn't give him the chance. Do you think the way you are now is because of me? I looked at him and said word by word, no, Enzo Jiang, you're wrong. The situation you're in today is entirely of your own making. It was you who, for a woman full of lies, destroyed our 8-year relationship with your own hands. In the eyes of others, you're just a simp. No one will remember your sacrifices, only your parents will mourn for you. Even in the end, you're still making excuses for her. I paused, looking at his increasingly desperate face, and continued, just now, your caregiver brought me a message. He said you told me. I know I was wrong, but Aria was also driven by illness. She didn't mean it. Will you forgive me? I mimicked his tone, throwing those exact words back at him. Enzo Jiang's body jolted violently, and the last trace of color drained from his face. He never expected that the caregiver would relay his exact words to me. What he never anticipated even more was that, to this day, subconsciously, he was still making excuses for Aria Bai. He has never truly acknowledged his mistakes. It was only after losing everything and having nowhere left to turn that he remembered me. The backup he had abandoned. How laughable, how ironic, looking at Enzo Jiang's face, which transitioned from pleading and shock to complete desolation. The last trace of resentment in my heart dissipated like smoke. I didn't want to waste another word on him. Right in front of him, I took out my phone and opened a lengthy post I had prepared long ago. The title is, How My Fiancé of 8 Years Was Two-Timing Me. In the article, I detailed the entire sequence of events, from how he knelt and begged me to save Aria Bai, to Aria Bai's provocative social media posts. And then to him hurling insults at me to defend Aria Bai. I attached screenshots of their disgraceful chat logs. The fatal phone call recording was posted. Also attached were the forged medical records and that shocking voluntary dual kidney donation agreement. All the evidence formed a complete and clear chain, firmly nailing his and Aria Bai's crimes to the pillar of shame. I pressed the publish button. Then, I turned the phone screen towards him, letting him witness with his own eyes how the article's views and comment count skyrocketed within just a few minutes. Enzo Jiang, I said, my voice as cold as a blade, watching his body tremble violently with fear and despair. You ruined my life in my previous existence. In this one, I'll destroy everything you have left. Physical punishment and legal judgment are far too lenient for the likes of you. I want you, and your Aria Bai, to live forever in the scorn and contempt of everyone, with stains you can never wash away for the rest of your lives. I will make every remaining day of your life filled with regret and pain, until death. After saying this, I didn't spare him another glance. Right in front of him, I clicked on his WeChat profile picture and pressed delete contact. Then, I blocked his phone number. After finishing all this, I turned around and left without a trace of nostalgia. Behind me came his hoarse and desperate cries, mixed with the loud sound of the wheelchair toppling over. But I didn't look back, not even once. I learned about what happened later from the internet. My article became a viral sensation across the entire internet. The story of Enzo Jiang and Aria Bai was widely reported by major media outlets. Their photos, their past, everything was dug up and exposed without mercy. Enzo Jiang became synonymous with the scum of the century, while Aria Bai was portrayed as the embodiment of a venomous femme fatale. A tidal wave of online violence surged toward the rehabilitation center where Enzo Jiang was staying. His already fragile mental state completely collapsed under the endless stream of insults and curses. All the caregivers were disgusted by his actions. Not only did he fail to receive treatment, but he was also subjected to verbal abuse from countless people. I heard his condition kept worsening, and not long after, in the dead of night, he died in his hospital bed due to kidney failure and complications. When he died, there wasn't a single person by his side. As for me, I had already left that city that left me scarred. I changed my phone number, found a new job, and started a new life in an unfamiliar coastal city. I often take walks by the seaside, watching the tides ebb and flow, the sun rise and set. The sea breeze scatters the gloom of the past, and the sunlight warms my cold heart. I finally understand that some people are like untamable vicious dogs. Your kindness and tolerance only fuel their greed and cruelty. The best way to deal with them is not to avoid or forgive, but to use even harsher means to cast them into hell, never to rise again. As for love, I no longer force it. I'm learning to love myself. In this second life, I am no longer someone's appendage, no longer someone's Isla. I am simply Isla Sue. Live for yourself, Isla Sue.